So the Chandler House. So Mr. Edward Benjamin Chandler, otherwise known as EB, was born on May 27, 1852 in Woodstock, Connecticut. He was the youngest of 4 children. And those are his kids' names. He attended Yale University, graduating from the Sheffield Scientific School in 1875. There's the proof. There you go, Woodstock. Not senior classes, not exactly really large back then for Yale. And then he came to Texas 2 years later, and then after he came to San Antonio, then he went to Uvalde, where he was appointed Deputy District Surveyor for Uvalde County in December of 1878, and then he was appointed County Surveyor in 1882 and 1883. So he was in the land business to start in Texas. Then he returned to San Antonio in 1883, and he entered into the land surveying, title, and mortgage loan business. So he started getting into the land and money business real early. And he with the firm Patterson and Chandler, and so he became the man with the money and the land right away. Mr. Chandler had continued success, including representing really large mortgage and investment companies, as well as a large clientele of individual investors, from the very beginning. Then he formed a partnership with Gus Gross, E.C. Tarrant.
Gross.
What's that?
The pronounces it Gross.
Gross. Thank you.
Gus Gross.
Thank you. Remember that. Gus Gross, E.C. Tarrant, S.L. Stumberg, and Guy McFarland. In Texas, you always have to get pronunciations correct. So E.B. Chandler and Company continued well beyond E.B.'s lifetime, and his partners were instrumental in the trust that established Chandler Memorial Home and well beyond his life. So his partners were instrumental not only during his lifetime, but well beyond. Mrs. Chandler, May Velder, was born in, some say Texas, some say Philadelphia. It's actually, Pennsylvania, excuse me. Very likely Wilkes-Barre. It's very hard to find. There's very little information as to exactly where she was born. I finally found that she was born in 1858, February of 1858. And it was actually her aunt that wrote it on a census form. Before that, all the other census forms, she's anywhere between 1858 and 1864, depending upon what she lied about her age on the census form. And it was when her aunt was listed as head of the household one year. Clearly, the man wasn't home, because she was listed as head of the household, and then the two of them were listed below her when it was his house. At the time, the man was always listed first, and so when his sister was listed first, she was home. She listed the dates out. I'm guessing that was right. So February of 1958 is when she was born to Louise and Frederick Jacob Velden. Her mother died when she was only 8 years old. So that was really important, because May was actually raised by her maternal grandmother, Frances Fanny Lamb, in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. And then Faye moved back to Texas with her Aunt Mary, Molly, following her grandmother's death in 1875. So she was really the only child of her mother, and then I'm not sure was estranged from her father, but was pretty much separate from her father, because she lived with her aunt for the most part. And then 1858, she was just her. She didn't have any other direct siblings. Her father, Jacob Velder, he moved back to Texas in 1870 after getting remarried. Jacob Velder was a lawyer, legislator, and a Confederate officer. He also served in the Mexican War. Having served as a district county judge and a representative in the Constitutional Convention in 1875, the town of Welder is named after him. Now, some may call it Welder or Velder. He's Prussian, so you can pronounce it the correct way or the Texan way. It's up to you. But the town that is named after him. So Now, so except for summers where she spent at the Greenbrier Resort in White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia, I love how, especially back in the 20s, 30s, 1910s, anytime anybody left town, they put it in the newspaper that, so that, Mr. and Mrs. such left town for the summer to go to, and so I actually found little clips of that, Mrs. Molly, and Mrs. Molly Lamb and Mary Belder went to White Sulphur Springs for the summer, and it had all those little tidbits. And also turns out that her father passed away, and it showed that his body was returned from White Sulphur Springs. So he evidently passed away while on. Obviously, at the time, this was not a sanatorium, but basically they went there, to get healthy, etc. He probably passed away while at this resort. Anyway, so at the time, she lived in San Antonio with her Aunt Molly up until 1884. Somewhere around 1884 to 1885 is when she met Mr. Chandler. Know very little about their courtship, but it was obviously relatively short, 1884, 1885. Because they, in that time they met and they were married in New Orleans in December of 1885. And then returned back from New Orleans very shortly thereafter, after getting married in New Orleans, and returned back to San Antonio, where they lived on South Florida Street and then later Ramona Street until such time as their home at 127 West French was completed. This was actually 127 until the 20s, I believe. All the way through the 1910 census and such, it was still 127. I'm not sure, knowing how San Antonio does their addressing as an architect, they could have changed it at any time. I pointed out, no, the address was different. So the original home was constructed in 1887, and is thought to have been designed by the architect C.A. Coughlin, which is the gentleman on the right, and his young partner Atlee Ayers, who is well known for doing a lot of buildings here in the Monte Vista District and others. And we actually later become a neighbor to the Chandlers. He actually lived at 202 Belknap, according to the 1910 census. So he lived down the street, not too far away. And in fact, it was, according to the census, only 3 doors down. Now, 3 doors was a big stretch, because they were on 3.5 acres here. So there were weren't quite as many doors between here and there. But yeah, so he and his family, there were 4 of them in that house, 4 or 5. But anyway, so their architect lived right down the street, not too unlike myself here, as I have been for a year and a half.
What was his name again?
Atlee Ayers. Atleeayers. So here is an image of the original house, circa about 1890. This is actually, image is the courtesy, this is from the Whitty Museum. This is one that they pulled from their archives after I asked them to go look. There's another one that's actually from the other direction, shooting from the left-hand side of the house, that you've seen in a book about the Monte Vista District. I have not been able to find the original photo of that one. Although I know in a 2004, 2014 event here, it was sitting on a table over there somewhere, but nobody can seem to find that photo. This one is actually licensed to us from the Whitty Museum. Although I can't put this on my YouTube video, I can use it here. But anyway, so this one is, I say, it's around 1890, and I know of that because the sun porch is not yet built, and I'll show you how. So here is my artist rendition of that, and I'll get in later as to how I know colors and siding and all that kind of stuff. I didn't make it up. There's actually a lot of research and a lot of crawling around attic spaces and other things that went into as to, did you make up the colors? Nope, I didn't. And I'll explain. So this is actually what the house did look like back around 1890. True Victorian gingerbread, and much more colorful. And I'll get into a lot more of the specifics of as to why it did look like that and everything, and the progression of it too. So So the Chandlers love to entertain. Oh my gosh, did they love to entertain. They frequently invited others into their home, onto their grounds, into the gardens, because Mrs. Chandler was well known for the flowers that she grew in her. Everywhere where the apartments was all gardens. And considering she lived, this is all rock. Unlike most of San Antonio, where it's all clay and everything else, this is all solid rock. I mean, this house sits on solid rock, and most of everything else is rock. She managed to cultivate some of the most beautiful gardens, and every article about her was just flowers, flowers. And so she was well known, and she loved to provide the flowers for weddings and birthdays and funerals, and I mean, but you name it, she provided flowers all over the place. She was well known for that. Having no kids, she just loved to provide for everyone around her, including the people that lived across the street. And so there was actually one article here at the top. It says, Mrs. E.B. Chandler gave her annual Christmas Eve eggnog, which always is a time of pleasure and merry greetings for all present. The table was laid with exquisite lace, and the color scheme was scarlet. Scarlet, I think it says carnations. There's scarlet carnations, but where the flower used for decorations in the centerpiece was holly and mistletoe. So many of these articles like that describing all the centerpieces and the flowers. And then the one below it is actually from a citation from the Who's Who Among the Women of San Antonio, which was published in 1917, which states, shows what, she's the daughter of Jacob and Elizabeth Lamb Welder. It says she was from Philadelphia. But she was a member of the Associated Charities Country Club, the Married Ladies Dancing Club, the YWCA and Red Cross, spends vacations at her summer home in Bass Rocks, Massachusetts, and fond of gardening, flowers, also fishing, motoring, and swimming. And then the society page right behind it actually has an additional article about her providing lunch for a particular wedding. It's just one article after the other about Mrs. Chandler doing this, Mrs. Chandler doing that. It was all about bringing people in, and she provided all the time. So that's her on the, oops, switch to my other one. That is her right here, Mrs. Chandler there, and then there's Mr. Chandler right there. Somewhere in my article there I have actually who the rest of these people are. They're neighbors and friends. So obviously they, in addition to just, they weren't all about just partying and being uppity. They were very much felt the importance of giving back to the community. They were very philanthropic. So they, Mr. President, E.B. was the president of the Associated Charities. E.B. Chandler gave himself quite a bit, but he also encouraged others. So he did charity drives through, he had the Kitty Club, he had the Red Cross, the Young Men's Christian Association, the Young Women's Christian Association. He was constantly brought in to go to Washington, D.C., or to Austin, or whatever, to get additional money and get additional funds to try, and he was the guy to get the clincher to get in there and get more funds. And whenever, in fact, the Associated Charities, which is actually the precursor to the United Way, when their funds were being cut off, it was like, oh, get EB in there, and he'd go off to Austin to try to get the funds. So it made sense that a couple that giving to the community and doing all that would later on give all of their stuff, all of their money, and all of their possessions to take care of people for the rest of their lives. It just made sense. Pat has a bet that I can't stay under an hour. So there's the original house. So as to the original house is Victorian style. It included very common gingerbread style trim, finials, very steep roofs, the scalloped siding. Actually, I have the was here somewhere. Where'd it go? I had a piece of the siding back here somewhere. Oh, I think I put it back there. There's a piece of the siding here. This is from up in the attic. So this is actually some of that, how we found some of those elements. This is actually hidden in part. Actually, you can't even get to some of these parts anymore. They're actually totally covered by ceiling. So this part actually here in the attic, this was, is behind one of the, it's up in the attic, but it's behind one of the original additions. So I ended up pulling off, this is like second generation siding, pulled off some of the siding and was like, oh, there's some of the original siding that I could identify from the picture. I was like, I can see the different style. Then I pulled off more and I could see the diagonal from that picture. Then I went up into this, I had to poke your head through a hole we were cutting to put in air conditioning ducts, and I could see the scalloped that I could see from that black and white photo. And then this is the bottom of the original Juliet balconies that hung out. And that is the original, that's from the 1900s. That's the paint color. Because it's been there and totally untouched since they totally enclosed it somewhere in around the 1920s, 1930s, when they actually enclosed it. So this red color has been there and totally protected, because it's totally enclosed, for 100 years.
Wow.
So we knew what the red color was because it's been there and it hasn't been touched. No rain, no sun, no nothing. And the other thing we can tell is, oh, we have red brick. Because if you look around the outside of the building, there was no red brick. Well, there is red brick on this house. It's been painted over. I'll get back to that later. So we actually, this was really cool to see this stuff and find it and go, oh, there was color on this house. So when we got to, when I started to actually look at the house and as to what colors to get, oh, okay, now I know what colors the house really was. So when I took that black and white photo, it was pretty clear as to what colors. So there's the siding that you can't quite see it, it's rendering, but the siding up here is actually at a diagonal, and then it changes to vertical. We actually did, when we were fixing the roof, we found original shingles, and they actually have a green tint to them. They actually have a painted green tint to them. But we knew what color the trim was. We know what color around the top of every window is a red brick surround, deep red brick. It's really gorgeous. And then on both sides, there is a Juliet balcony on both sides. On this side over here, it's totally enclosed by a second story that they added above the niche. On this side, on this side, it's enclosed by that sloped roof, where it's sort of a niche that they added on. But both are actually visible when we were actually able to see above the ceiling. So, yeah, not made up. These are actually the colors that were there. So when I started to work with the historical, the commission about what am I going to do for the actual colors later, we're like, I already know. I sent them all the pictures that just showed you, and they were like, yeah, that's absolutely what we want you to do. So the Chandlers continued to update and add on to their home during the 36 years that they lived here. To the east of the dining room sits now the sun parlor, which originally wasn't enclosed, but it was built in 1895. We actually found this little wood block inside the walls when we were fixing the sunroom, which actually it's really hard to read, but it basically says something in terms of the name, but it says, "We built this room, 1895." Pretty clear as to dating for that room. I appreciate that. So we actually did. We were like, okay, well, they did that. Anywhere we opened up walls, we wrote almost the same verbiage on walls. And so I was like, guys, no profanity, no nothing. Do that. People will appreciate it later. So to the east of the dining room now, it has the sun parlor built in 1895. So where they had wicker furniture, a swing, fans, and vines. It was an open porch. It was an open screened porch originally. And then later, about 1905, it was enclosed with windows. So all of the windows that you see on the first floor and second floor are all stamped. Actually, the rails have a stamp 1905 or 1906, I can't remember. They're all replacement windows. That makes sense. It was built in 1887. They replaced the windows like 19 years later, 20 years. That's not too bad for that time period. If you replace your windows now, 30 years, it's not too bad. So, and these are actually high quality windows for the time periods, because a lot of times there were wood rails. These are steel rails, which back then was actually, that's money. So, the much of the original home's interior style was in decoration was, as you've heard, was the work of none other than Mrs. Chandler herself. So, as an avid sculptor, painter, Mrs. Chandler was frequently recognized for her talents. At the San Antonio Van Dyke Art Exhibition in 1888, Mrs. Chandler was awarded an honorable mention for wood carving, a silver medal for still life in oil, and a gold medal for landscape in oil. Within her home, Mrs. Chandler's talents in wood carving are showcased in the dining room's mesquite panels. Sorry, not too many notes. I'm going to go back. Sorry. Depicting a wide variety of hardwoods, flowers, and other plants, as well as the grape clusters and sunflowers in the parlor, dining room, and in her own room on the second floor. And there are some enlargements of some of those gorgeous mesquite panels, and there's not just repeats. Every single one is unique. So there's an article written in the San Antonio Express, Sunday, July 16, 1911, called "Where Art Helps Serve the Meal." They were talking about all the beautiful dining rooms. They're all about high society, so they were talking about all the beautiful dining rooms in San Antonio. One of the handsomest homes is that of Mr. and Mrs. E.B. Chandler on French Place. The spacious grounds of 3.5 acres. This was not still about the same size. Shaded in large trees of various kinds, with walks separating flower beds of bewildering beauty. Open spaces of lawn giving finishing note to the perfect piece of landscape gardening. The house is built of gray brick. I'm curious if it turned beige or if it was gray back then or not, I'm not sure. The large drawing room and reception hall reflect the faultless taste of the owners. But it is the dining room that the greatest interest is aroused, for in here the handwork of Mrs. Chandler is seen in a most unusual manner, surrounding the room to a height of about 4 feet. The walls are wainscoted in the rich colored Texas mesquite, every other panel being hand-carved in each different design of fruits, flowers, or foliage. The remarkable feature of this work, aside from its artistic beauty, is that it was done by Mrs. Chandler. A tall, graceful cluster of sunflowers is on one panel, a running spray of vines on another, a cluster of oak leaves on another, and so on around the room. And it goes on and on and on. He really liked the quite a bit. It did talk about a china closet that was actually built on top of the mantel in there with plate glass, which is not there anymore. And as I read through, I was like, oh, gosh, that would have been nice to still have that there too. And then at that time in 1911, it was still a screened-in porch. So it was right around after that. So it was even after the time that they put the windows in, the original windows, then they came back and put the windows in the sunroom. So they probably didn't even close that sunroom in until after 1911, after they wrote the article. And then upstairs, this is actually on, you'll see this is up on the mantle on the fireplace in Mrs. Chandler's room. She loved her swallows too. They're all over in her paintings and everything as well. This is on her fireplace. Sunflowers were her thing. She loved sunflowers. In the east or west, hay meets best. That was a very common thing or saying back then. Sunflowers, so that was her thing. So there's actually the article talking about her winning those from the Van Dyke Art Exhibition. So we actually did very little work to that one other than just staining it. Although just realize there's one piece of molding missing at the bottom. We're gonna get it. So her love of painting can be seen in the oil and wood images of flowers and birds adorning the main staircase, as well as the corn and the banana trees on 2 doors that you saw when you walked in, that originally hung on the second floor as actual doors. So this is actually the main staircase now, that you can see the paintings, and then these are before any work. This is on the landings of the main stair. So as you go up the main stair and look to your right, you'll see this painting of the swallows. And then here's some of the pre-renovation shots of some of her artwork, which, being on the main stair, taking a beating. They took a beating. So here they are on the actual doors themselves, for years. Oops. So it was a common and reasonable assumption that the renowned Impressionist painter, Julian Onderdonk, who who lived right across the street, 128 West French Place. They're doing all that work right at their house right now. Must have probably lent his hand, probably did the paintings and everything else. You know, bringing color into their house. But in fact, it was Julian. It was actually Julian's father, Robert Jenkins Onderdonk, Julian and his sister, that actually took, you know, their inspiration from Mrs. Chandler and this house in their own works, as opposed to vice versa. Julian is one of the more famous Texas Impressionists. He actually had 3 paintings hanging in the Oval Office. In fact, he's the only one to have that many of his own paintings hang in the Oval Office during the George W. Bush administration. One of Julian's earliest pieces, Picket Fence, View of the Chandler House on the left, and a later unnamed charcoal drawing that shows the Chandler's house from 1919. That one's also from the Whitty Museum that they found for me, that show from his own home. So he loved drawing the Chandler House from his house. These are both from Julian. Interestingly enough, the one from 1919, he did this one around the time, this is when he was doing his famous stuff. I mean, this is the sketch that he did when he went home. And he was doing, I mean, these famous, you know, Impressionist paintings, and this is the sketch he did when he went home. Another one, Robert Jenkins Onderdonk has a well-known, I say well-known because you can go to buy a print of it off Amazon, of Mrs. E.B. Chandler in her room. Depicts a young Mrs. Chandler sitting in her bedroom, facing south towards downtown, with the clock tower and the quadrangle of Fort Sam Houston in the distance. And if you look on Google Maps and look at it, it is actually that direction. According to an article by Dorothy Galloway in San Antonio Express, 1926, this very painting, along with other watercolors of their home in Bass Rocks, Massachusetts, and other examples of Julian Onderdonk's work hung on the walls of the dining room and the parlor, while at the time it was the Chandler Memorial Home. So a lot of the very expensive paintings did actually hang in the home. And then this is actually one of Eleanor Onderdonk's miniature portraits. It's like this big. Wow. This is it's actually currently in the Dallas Museum of Art's collection. And it's sitting with her dog. She's probably not too far from her gardens, if I had to guess. And then it was, you know, their unselfish spirit obviously led to Mr. and Mrs. Chandler, you know, to their perpetuation of their home for the happiness of others, obviously later. But Mrs. Chandler passed away on Christmas Eve of 1922. And then not long after, 7 months later, Mr. Chandler joined her, passing away in July of 1923. And both of them passed away in Massachusetts. They both passed away at their summer home in Gloucester. She actually was in the hospital in Boston, but he passed away, I believe, at their home in Gloucester. So as part of their will, the Chandlers left their home, their fortune, their house, everything to a trust that was managed by his partners at E.B. Chandler and Company, to establish the Chandler Memorial Home for Aged Gentlewomen in needy circumstances. It's hard to put that on a business card, but although they were given all their ideas and plans, so the Chandlers had all this. It wasn't like they came up with this like 6 months before they passed away. They had all this years in advance. They had and it was based upon other homes and such that they had learned about. The trustees' efforts were pretty clear in the fact that all these additions and renovations to the home were done in 7 months. They actually applied for the building permit on February 28, 1924 for a value of $50,000. You actually found it in the newspaper. And then they finished and dedicated the home in September of 1924. So, yeah, I told Pat when we did this one, don't count on that. Sorry, that's not going to happen.
Question?
Yeah.
So this iteration of the home looks very institutional. So,
Yeah, they did. The end of it is very I felt that myself.
Yeah, so were they actually living there when it looked like that?
Yes. Oh, the Chandlers, no. No.
Just for the home for
This is after they passed away.
Okay.
So after they passed away, they did the renovation for this. So the Victorian look They took off the front porch, they renovated, so this is 1924, so you're getting into the Art Deco movement. So it's getting away from the Victorian, they took off the front porch. So you have a very different look to the building at that point, because now it's 1924, you're no longer really in that Victorian style. And they added, what I found really interesting, and so the next picture you can see it too, this is from 1958.
Wow.
And you can see the aerial of that whole building. What I found really interesting is that, you know, this section of the building, which you can still see today, the building ends right here. Okay, the building, so we are right there. Right now, we are right here. So the building ends here. What I found interesting is that they spent a lot of money and effort to right there. And then the rest of this, very plain. Yeah, I mean, it's a solid wall. There's no in or out. There's no decoration. And then around the backside, because I did find some other pictures that I can see the backside, no decoration whatsoever on the backside. So I don't know that they ran out of money or they just realized that no one's going to look at it from that side. I'm not sure. But from the side you can see, at least, it was very attractive. Or maybe they figured there's plenty of plants, they're going to cover it up. As an architect, you're always taught, if you can't draw it, just put a tree in front of it. So maybe that's what they were figuring they were doing. I don't know. But, so yeah, so this was, oops, no, that's, I'll go back. So this is the carriage house. So this, obviously we had the carriage. There's Howard Street as it turns right there. So interestingly enough, this is actually, I have a big aerial, I didn't put it in the presentation, but I have a big aerial of Monte Vista District around this time. And this is one of the few houses that this, interrupts Howard Street, and it always has, where it looks down Howard. I mean, the house straight looks down the street. It's not looking in the middle of a block or anything like that. That the front door looks down the avenue. It's really interesting. It's one of the few houses that does that, where the back of the house looks up the street and the front of the house looks down the street. And in this one area, you look at it and go, it's almost like you're Washington, D.C. or something. It's like the White House where it's looking up and down the street. I found that interesting, but the fact that he was in the mortgage and land business, and he got to decide because this was individually platted. This is one of the few areas in Monte Vista District, because it was one of the first, that he actually got to work the plat for this land. That's pretty sure that's why that is. That's why it is. So, let me go back. So the additions, to their home, so they were designed so they provided for 22 ladies to have the space, medical care, the assistance that they needed, while doing so in a non-institutional setting. The Chandler Memorial Home was always designed to feel like a home. Even though you're right, from the outside it looks a little more institutional, but compared to the institutions of the day, which are hospital or sanatorium-like, this was home, especially with the inside looking like that. I mean, this is where they came to dine, in these spaces. This felt like it was the Chandler's home. So it was always intended to feel like a home. And it was always decorated like that. It still had the Chandler silverware, their silver. It still had their crystal in it and such. So that was the intent. It was always meant to feel like that.
I thought I heard you say that they left it for gentlemen.
Gentlewomen, sorry. Gentlewomen in needy circumstances. It was all. It was for single ladies that had lost their husbands. It was generally for, well, it wasn't always widows. It was for also ladies that never been married. But it was always only one woman.
Is that carriage house gone?
Yes, so the carriage house was torn down when they did the nursing home in 1975, which I'll get to.
So that other house that's across from it, basically, the Episcopal Church, is that a carriage?
The Episcopal Church sits right here. That building there is where the church and everything else sits over here. So this is the church property over here.
But there's an apparent old building right by the right near the pork shear and all that.
I think you're thinking, it's over here.
It looks old.
It's over that way.
Was that maybe some kind of
I'm not sure.
carriage house for the?
Not part of the Chandler estate.
No.
Not part of the Chandler. This Howard Street is here. and it was always there. The Chandler's land always ended right here, and it went all the way up to Craig, and their land actually went all the way over to Maine, right? Yeah, and then it went over to Howard, and then all the way down. So the apartments were actually part of their land first.
Was there another?
And then it was cut off later on. So for 45 years, the home operated as intended by Mr. and Mrs. Chandler, what they wanted, providing for its residents, which included a lot of the notable women of Texas, as I was shown, some of the ladies that were there. And so this is actually from 1926. They actually, they have this a long article that talks all about it. It talks about the colors that were in the home, talks about the draperies that were in the home. This is actually one where it talked specifically about the paintings being Mrs. Chandler. And so these ladies were very proud of the fact that Mrs. Chandler painted those paintings on the stair. But if you were to tell them that Julian did, oof, boy, oh, yeah, that would have been a bad thing. So this is one of those articles that people, in the 70s or 80s didn't have access to because it wasn't scanned in. So, and then the one on the right actually was from from a 1933 article where, the Chandler Memorial Home, the home of late Mr. and Mrs. E.B. Chandler, was gay with the spirit of the holiday season when the annual New Year's reception was held one evening, with Mrs. J. King acting as hostess in the absence of Mrs. Lauren Clifton, who had been given an unkind jolt by an automobile coming around the corner with undue speed. The lovely rooms with their paintings and wealth of hothouse plants were reminiscent of the days when the Chandlers held open house New Year's Day, and up and down the street for blocks the teams hitched to the handsomest carriages, Victorians, Brahms, and various other kinds of manned by something drivers, livery drivers stood waiting to the pleasure of the owners. I mean, it was all about just getting. That was the Chandlers. So they lived it up. And this was a nursing home. This was their nursing home, and it was not your typical nursing home for the 1920s at all. And so that's what the Chandlers really wanted. And in 1968, however, the trustees, and this is all thanks to state regulations. 1968, however, the trustees recognized that state licensing requirements, which they were not going to be able to meet, necessitated a change. So the home was closed in 1968 and given to Morningside Manor Incorporated, which actually started in 1960 over at the Meadows campus. The home was closed, given them along with the land, furnishings, and an endowment. Basically, given lock, stock, and barrel to Morningside Manor Incorporated. And then in 1975, a new 120-bed nursing home was built, and the three-story apartment building was completed in 1978. Renovations and repairs were also made to the house in 1977-ish, where they cut off the building right here. They cut off the whole rest of the section of the building. Really, and obviously you can see how close it is, so they could build the nursing home. And they did all that so they could also do the senior activity center. So they did the kitchen that was over here. They basically did all these renovations so that they could use this as the activity center for the nursing home. And these are some pictures actually from, there's the original building of the nursing home before any additions. And this is actually 1996. This is the addition of the assisted living. So this is the doing additions to the nursing on one end. You can see there's the apartment building already built. So these are actually here are from 96, 97 when they were building the assisted living and nursing additions.
And the French place, also the French place building.
This was built in 1978.
So it's younger than the Howard home.
Yeah, well, the original Howard residence is the nursing home built in 1975.
Right.
It was the first thing they built after they cut off the end of the house.
Did they?
Then they added on to it in 96. So they added on this little bit of end here, then they added on the whole one-story portion of the Howard residence in 1996. What was the assisted living was added on in 1996. So the one-story portion is newer than the three-story portion. The three-story portion is the original nursing home. I'm a careful passenger, although I did start late. So in the additions to the nursing home and all that were completed, and then since that closing in 1958, is that right? 68? 68, thank you. In 1968, Morningside Manor Inc., now Morningside Ministries, continued operations and care for thousands of seniors for 45 years. So this is probably around 1970s. I don't have the exact date on this, but this is around after the time that they did the renovations on the house. And I came into a huge cache of pictures that we found in a shipping container over on the other one that we were cleaning out, that I've scanned in. Oh, so many, just the stuff that happened in here between the 60s and today. So I've got, I don't know how, I've several hundred pictures of just different activities, different things that happen right here in the house. So many different fun things. Obviously, since that closing, they've cared for so long, but unfortunately, 2018, due to inadequate funding for long-term care programs by the state, Morningside Ministries made the difficult decision to close the licensed facilities on campus. And it was purely due to funding. However, that's why I came in. Shortly thereafter, Morningside began investigating future opportunities for the Chandler estate, and very quickly, due to Morningside's own history, in early 2020, the decision was made to redevelop the community into an independent living community, so that Morningside can continue its mission to offer reasonably priced housing and services to San Antonio senior community, as well as senior community. So the Chandler estate welcome back residents in early 2022, and obviously a lot of you recognize those spaces. And I'm in one of those shots right there. I think I might have a jacket on, so you're not going to recognize me.
And a mask.
Oh God, I do. I have a jacket on. You're going to see me with a jacket on very often. So to continue that mission, the Chandlers began nearly 100 years ago. Morningside decided in 2023 to renovate and restore the Chandler's home for use as the organization's new corporate offices, because why go be somewhere else when you can be right where it started here, and an activity and learning center through its partnership with Oasis San Antonio. So here's where we started this project. So the work included, first, all the nasty stuff, which was abating all the asbestos and mold. Most of it was the asbestos. It looks terrible, but most of it was just mastic under the tile inside. But boy, you'd think we were taking uranium out of the building, the way that they make you do it. Air testing, the whole bit. They make you cover everything in plastic. It's amazing how much plastic they waste, considering they're just pulling a tile off the floor. But so we abated all the asbestos. The other thing we also abated was all the roofing. The roofing was actually much hotter. It was 45% asbestos. It was not clay tile. It was asbestos cement tile. It was 45% crusted tile asbestos. So be glad if you never touched any of that roof tile. Yeah, it was nasty stuff. We also ripped out every bit of the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems in this house, 100%. Because you don't want to know what those ducts look like. Underneath the crawl space, I've seen them, and I'm not on nightmares, hopefully, about them, but they were not good. So there's the old mechanical on the left. All the new mechanical in this house is pretty much what it would be in a nursing home. It is all hard duct. It is not a residential system. It is all metal duct work. It is extremely efficient. It's clean. You can actually clean it like you would in a healthcare facility, because honestly, the company that put it in is a healthcare. The guy does nursing homes, and so the engineers that designed it. So there's the old attic on the left-hand side where there's old duct board, and there's the attic as it is now. And it looks swishy, but that's actually insulation on the right-hand side. There's the old roof with all the asbestos cement tile. And then, so after that tile was removed, then we had the fun experience in December of that year of replacing about 30% of the roof decking. And this was done when it was below freezing. Right before, I was here Christmas Eve, I think, or the day of Christmas Eve. That's me up there attaching the tie-off points before we could actually tie off. Mind you, this roof is a 12 and 12 pitch, So it's a 45-degree angle. And it drops off 35 feet off the edge. You can't be afraid of heights in doing this. We had to replace all these boards individually because they were either rotted out or broken. And they're all 3/4 inch thick or up to a 1 1/4 inch thick, and they're all very thick. It was crazy. So there again, the crazy architect is up there replacing boards on the roof. So after that, we put on a brand new synthetic roof tile. So it's actually a composite tile on a synthetic, so it can handle the beating of the hail and everything else, but it has the historic slate look. So our actual slate is really heavy, really expensive, and it does not do well with hail. But a synthetic tile, you can get with a hammer and beat the heck out of it. And this stuff will last for 50 years. And it's got a warranty that lasts that long. So it's great for Morningside because it's cost effective that way. And it looks great. So that went up afterwards, and I'm glad I'm not the guys who had to put that on. And then, so here's a view from, that was me that took that picture, in the lift, just to get a shot that you can see the whole roof. Because from down below, you can't see too much of it. Then just a couple little details. You'll see it throughout when you do the tour. On all of the historic doors, I did actual historic hinges everywhere I possibly could. They were not all here. I did a lot of hunting online. I went to Round Top. I actually found all the ones on the right-hand side from one guy in Round Top. I cleaned them out. And they were all, there's a mixture of brass and steel hinges. All the steel ones, I totally refinished, replated in nickel and copper. So that's actually what you see up there, is I'm actually re-electroplating them in nickel and copper so that they don't rust. Now the brass ones I didn't plate, they're still brass, and you'll still see them around here and there. And then the light fixtures. So some of the light fixtures are reproductions. The big ones out in the front 3 rooms are all reproduction brass light fixtures. They actually come from a company in Port Townsend, Washington, which is where my grandfather was born. It's very ironic. But the ones in here, like that one, and the one in the conference room, and the one in the front entry are actual from 1900, 1910, which I found in multiple different places, and I fully restored piece by piece, and I mean piece by piece, and they're all new, brand new sockets, new wiring, new chain, new everything, but and boy, that was a lot of time spent in front of that wheel. And I think I inhaled a lot of resin. That may explain a lot of things later on. Me and my asthma don't get along with resin, I found out. Even though I did wear a mask most of the time, but not all the time. So anyway, so yeah, these are all actual antique pictures. And there's just some close-ups. So some of them have shades. Some of them have what I learned new terms, like those are called bobeches. That little cover that goes over the where the light goes. Well, that sort of fell back on. We'll go back to that. But yeah, so those are called bobeches, and then the other ones that don't. And there's some that just have the shades. But these were really fun trying to find the matching ones, because I had one fixture that had all 5, and I had another fixture that only had 2. So I had to go find 4 that matched. Yeah, that was really fun. Okay, so here's some before and after pictures, and I'm doing, I'm a little bit late, but I started late. Actually, I'm at 53 minutes according to my timer. So here's what the here's what the parlor looked like when we first started. You can see, well, it wasn't a terrible shape, but there was, popcorn ceilings. Oh my God, I love those 1970s popcorn ceilings. 60s, 70s, they're all over the place. A lot of yellowing plastic fixtures on the ceilings, etc. The stair runners. A lot of little things missing. Things like, if you look here we noticed right here, nobody ever felt like there was something, but when we got up here, I realized that there were 2 square notches in the top. Like, there's something missing right there. But in every picture I could ever find, couldn't find anything in that picture. So, we go along, here's some shots of, as we went along, stripped all the ceiling off. So from the 1926 article, it talked about this room was blue. It was painted blue. At least in 1926 it was blue. And so I went searching for the blue. And I actually found it. So underneath one of the windows up front, now ignore that blue because somebody painted over where I found the blue. But I found the original blue on the stucco, the plaster, excuse me, underneath. So that blue underneath was the original blue. I was just real careful about scratching off the old paint. And so the blue of the room is actually as close to the color as I could get from 1926. So like I'm gonna get as close as I can to it. And then here you can actually see this is no idea what it looked like, but taking from what the other parts of that fireplace looked like, I actually created 2 spindles that fill in, but something that was there. And then here is where we're at today. So you can see the 2 spindles up there. I actually learned how to turn on the lathes just to do those. As well as, and we'll show a little bit more on the stair, adding, as you recreated some new newel posts to replace the ones that were lost over the years. Added newel post lamps at the bottom because I felt like I needed it, and it was a very Victorian kind of thing to do. And then just a lot of light staining and cleaning, as well as there you get the blue color, and got rid of a lot of that really just ugly light fixtures that were on things that were on the walls, things like that. Things like emergency light fixtures are recessed into the ceiling as much as possible. Like we tried to do the ones that all you'll see is the square outline of it where it pops down. Those little touches, and then push button, brass, mother of pearl switches and with brass cover blades, things like that. Those little details I tried really hard to bring in. So here's the stair. Here's what it did look like, and now it does with the artwork. There's the newel post, one of 4 that I
You really notice the artwork more now.
Oh yeah. Oh, it pops. It pops now. So here's here's before and after shots. So the artist that did an artist did all the artwork, did restoration of all the artwork, and she did her best to not repaint the artwork, but just fix. She actually lives right across the street from me. I have an artist who oil is her medium, and she did an amazing job of just repairing. She didn't fill in the gouges, she just went over them, she just tried to repair, because there was a lot of damage. There were a lot of holes, there were a lot of gouges, and especially when you see like the one of the corn, oh, it was bad. So here's the one of the birds on the top. You can see all the little nicks and scratches, and they're gone. And then here's one of the doors. So the 2 on the right are as they are now. The one on the left is actually where it was before, and then I have a blow up to really show you the difference.
Wow.
Yeah. So if you look close, you can still see the gouge, but this was a door. It got hit hard. So I told Pat real earlier on, I don't want these to be doors anymore. These just need to be art on the wall, and nobody disagrees with me at all. So that she did a great job. The color's a little bit off because the color really was. She didn't recolor it that much. That's more my pictures. So here's the drawing room, which is the one on the left. What it did look like. There's a wonderful picture from 2008 that the chandelier did. So we stripped everything off. We did have actually found a lot of water damage underneath the stained glass. It was due, see if you wondered when you entered why all the concrete got cut out right there, it was due to the water damage. The concrete was higher than the wood floor. It got poured at a level higher, so the water was actually coming in and was causing the wood to actually rot behind it. So we're like, all right, concrete's gone. So I had to cut the concrete out, and that's why we have rock there now. So we will not be putting any. So we can just put pots with flowers and such there, but the water has to stay away from that edge. And then there's where we're at now. So nice reproduction fixtures with actual the medallions are solid plaster. They are very heavy. And so all the furniture, almost all the furniture in here is all antique. It took me quite a few months to gather it all up. That piano was actually from 1840s. It's a French piano. It will never play again, I'm sorry. Somebody put brand new modern strings on it. The piano guy actually looked at it and said it'd be about $10,000 to have it fixed. He said it'd be great, I get a new motorcycle out of it, but no. So the Victrola there on the left is a 1920 Victrola, fully operational. I even put some of my grandparents' records in there. Candy has the key to it. So, so these are actually, and when we get to the other pictures, some of these are actual very expensive, very old antiques. Some of them are actually very expensive. Like I got a good deal on them. They're very well known. So here's the dining room where we talk about all the panels. Here's the, as we got through all, and here is all nice and completed. The black piano doesn't really fit in there, but we had nowhere else to go with it, so we got it tuned, and it plays. So now we do have an operational piano in the house. And then the sunroom we actually started working on well before, even when we were working on the main, right after we finished the main IL, because it had so much water damage. There was one downspout for the entire roof, and it was going down inside the wall. That, termites, ants, water. We basically had to rebuild the entire wall. It was really bad. So got that all finished. This is what it looked like after they totally rebuilt, redid all the trim, and then in addition to that, we replaced the furniture and have new antique chairs. So these chairs are actually from 1900s, and this is custom upholstery. This is actually hand-done needlepoint. These are all, I commissioned these from a lady in the UK. She did these all custom. Her name is Hillary Duffy. And so they're based off of the design that was on the chair originally, except for the swallows that are added in there to match the swallows that are in the paintings. So she is actually trained from the Royal Academy of Needlepoint in London.
How long did it take her
6
to do
months.
those chairs?
6 months.
6 months?
I mean, I'm sure she had other things to do too, but it took
No,
about
I
6
mean,
months. Oh, she was amazing. She was amazing. Now, I'd be happy to give you her website. She does portraits of animals. You send her a picture, she'll do a portrait of an animal, and they're like $60. Like this, and they're freaking gorgeous. They're just like, you'll see them up close. They're over here. She was amazing, and she's the most unbelievable nice person ever. And if I told you what I paid for these, you'd just fall over, because they're nothing compared to what I even asked her if I could pay her more, and she refused to.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it cost me more. It cost me more to have them reupholstered and shipped than it did to pay her for doing the work. So yeah, and then so here's upstairs. This was the ugly upstairs. These railings are this high. So you go too close, you're going over the edge. This is from the 1920s, so that's what they were. The carpet over there is really ugly. So we stripped all that off. Of course, underneath it's all wood floor, just like this. And we did a lot more work upstairs because it's their offices, so there's a lot more framing. But we did not remove any wood flooring in this house because the wood flooring is real pretty throughout the whole house. And we did this. So we really wanted to bring, because we needed new stair rails because they need to be code. But I really wanted to bring some Victorian in there. Well, I couldn't make it a Victorian space, it's not. But I wanted to bring some of that Victorian feel in there just to bring some homage in it. But it's gorgeous. I mean, it just bring that little bit of it into that space, which is otherwise very contemporary. Yeah, so it's really gorgeous. So then I did the newel posts as you go up, which are very similar to the newel posts of the old stair that actually goes to the attic. That's how she used to come down. That same round newel post. And we're almost done through here in this one, so I'm on pretty darn long time here. Oh shoot, Pat one. I'm over by 4 minutes. This is Mrs. Chandler's bedroom. This is the center one up top. So this is what it looked like there. Pretty simple on this one. We mostly just cleaned it up. Floors were so amazing. And now these upstairs, we have a lot more LED lighting, I didn't do. But, you know, we did custom ceiling fan poles. Each room has a different hand-painted ceiling fan pole. You know, painted sunflowers on the ones in Mrs. Chandler's room, etc. All those little details just make a huge difference to it. This is the room next to it, which was actually that little niche in the end was totally closed up. Was a closet. They totally closed up the windows. You could, even from the outside, you could see the boards. And we opened it. Oh, it was horrid. It was horrid. So we totally opened it up, as you can see on the left. And this is that space now. It's just unbelievable. Now they all have shades now because this is a really hot room in the summer. But yeah, so it's just gorgeous. And then now, of course, you recognize this. Well, not sort of. It doesn't look the same anymore. So that's vinyl flooring, over carpet, over wood floor, over the concrete deck. Unbelievable. So we stripped it all off, and it took a lot of stripping. Put up, obviously, this wall here. So these doors, as you see here, there used to be the folding doors all the way across, right where that bulkhead is. And we've taken some of these doors and actually put them together. And that's the reason that they don't quite come together, because they're old and two of them warped. So I'm actually going to be creating a frame that actually straightens them out and makes it so we can keep the sound out a little better. But that's why they don't come together, because they're 100-plus-year-old doors that warped. And of course you recognize that. And so it's amazing that we went from a house that's the old brick was that red color, and so we wanted, God, I would have loved to have just taken off at some point they did that beige paint, but instead we really realized that, okay, we couldn't afford to take it off, and the brick is so brittle. I mean, it's really soft. We were going to destroy the brick taking off that paint. So I hate painting brick is just a sin. But I talked to the historical commission. I'm like, all right, but I know the color the brick is. So how about I just paint it exactly the color of the brick? And they're like, yep, that sounds good. So that color of the red is as close to the brick color as I can get. So at least it looks like the brick color that it did, and it really does pop now with that color. And it just makes a huge difference, you know. And so the Chandler home, it's grown, it's changed, just like the city around it has for 137 years now. And it sits on a solid hill of limestone, and she grew gardens of flowers that she shared with others. That she and Evie built a home that is, on that foundation that has provided care for others, for thousands of people. The Chandler Homes Foundation, honestly, this foundation is as strong as it was, as strong now as it was then. I have been under this crawl space, I've seen it. And both in the bricks that it's built in, and honestly in the mission that it still provides. It's a pretty amazing story, actually. The physical house is still here in the way it is, and the mission that it's behind it is still going strong, and now continues. And it's quite, really, it's everything. It's a marketer's dream in terms of the similarities, or the simile. And so now the Chandler home can continue the Evie and May's wish to care for older adults through the community Morningside Ministries, and on-site through the educational and outreach programs, which we are doing here today, as well as social events, for decades to come. So, the Chandler House. Welcome home.
Thank you.